The salon of the Vega Santa Maria mansion gleamed under the crystal chandeliers, but the tension in the air was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Maria Esperanza Gonzalez, now dressed in an elegant black tailored suit and carrying an Italian leather briefcase, walked with firm steps across the marble she had once cleaned on her knees. Her high heels resonated like hammer blows in the sepulchral silence that had taken over the place. Doña Carmen Vega Santa Maria, the family matriarch, sat in her golden velvet armchair, her trembling hands clutching the arms of the furniture. Her face, once haughty and contemptuous, now showed a sickly pallor. Beside her, her husband Ricardo stood upright, his gaze fixed on the floor, unable to face the eyes of the woman he had destroyed years ago. "Do you recognize me?" Maria's voice resonated in the salon with an authority she had never possessed when she worked within these walls. "I am Maria Esperanza Gonzalez, the thief. Remember? The dirty black woman who stole Grandmother Esperanza's jewelry." Doña Carmen swallowed audibly. "Maria, we..." Silence. Maria raised her hand with an imperious gesture. "For 15 years I have waited for this moment. 15 years building my life on the rubble of my dignity that you trampled. 15 years wondering if someday I would have the courage to return and tell you what I really think of you." The echo of her words spread through the corners of the room, carrying with it the weight of years of humiliation and pain. Ricardo Vega tried to step forward, but Maria's gaze stopped him cold. "You, Mr. Ricardo, looked me in the eyes when you accused me of being a thief and knew you were lying. I saw you doubt for a second, but you chose the lie because it was easier to destroy a black employee than face the truth about your own family." "Maria, please let us explain," murmured Doña Carmen with a broken voice. "Explain what? That when your mother-in-law's emeralds disappeared, the first thing you thought was to blame the maid? That you didn't even bother to look for other explanations? That you threw me out on the street like a mangy dog, without references, without money, with nothing but the clothes I was wearing?" Maria slowly approached the family portrait hanging above the fireplace, where the smiling parents appeared with their 3 children: Sebastian, the eldest, Valentina, the rebel, and little Isabella, who was then barely 8 years old. But there was someone in this house who did have the courage to tell the truth. An 8-year-old girl who was worth more than all of you combined. Maria turned toward the couple with eyes bright with contained tears. "Isabella knew who had taken the jewelry, but you didn't want to listen to her because the truth was too painful." Doña Carmen began to sob quietly, covering her face with her hands. "We knew. My God, we knew that Sebastian had problems, but we couldn't accept that our son... Your son was a drug addict who sold his own family's belongings to buy cocaine," Maria screamed with a fury that had been fermenting for decades. "And you preferred to destroy an innocent woman's life rather than face the reality that you had failed as parents." The silence that followed was deafening. Only the tick-tock of the pendulum clock and Doña Carmen's muffled sobs could be heard. Ricardo remained motionless like a statue of salt, with glassy eyes fixed on some inexistent point in space. Maria opened her briefcase and extracted a series of documents. "Do you know what I did after you threw me out? I worked cleaning offices during the early morning hours. I sold empanadas on the street during weekends. I enrolled in night courses to finish my secondary education. And when I gathered enough money, I studied accounting." Her hands trembled slightly as she held the papers. "It took me 10 years to graduate, because I had to work to survive. But I achieved it. And then I studied business administration. And then I got a master's degree in finance." Ricardo finally lifted his gaze. "Maria, we made a terrible mistake." "A mistake?" Maria's laughter was bitter as gall. "Destroying an innocent person's life is just a mistake? You took away my job, my reputation, my dignity. You forced me to start from scratch with nothing. But above all, you stole something you can never return: my faith in justice, my trust that good people are rewarded for their honesty." Doña Carmen rose tremblingly from her chair. What can we do to compensate you? We'll give you money. We'll help you with whatever you need." Maria looked at her with a mixture of pity and contempt. "Do you think I come for money? Do you think my pain can be bought with bills?" She put the documents in her briefcase and headed toward the door. I come because I needed you to know that I survived your cruelty, that I became stronger than I ever imagined I could be, and that every day of my life has been a victory against the injustice you did to me." She stopped at the threshold and turned one last time toward the couple who had shattered her world so many years ago. "But above all, I come to tell you that your daughter Isabella grew up and became an extraordinary woman, a woman who had the courage to look for me, to ask for forgiveness on behalf of her family, and to tell me the whole truth about what really happened that night." Doña Carmen's eyes opened wide. "Isabella? Have you spoken with Isabella?" "Isabella is now my business partner. Together we have built a consulting company that bills millions per year. The girl you ignored when she wanted to defend me became the bravest woman I know." Maria smiled for the first time since she had entered the house. "And now we are the ones who will give jobs to you." 15 years ago, Maria Esperanza Gonzalez got up every morning at 5 o'clock sharp, when the first lights of dawn barely filtered through the windows of her small room at the back of the mansion. Her hands, rough from years of domestic work, moved with mechanical precision as she prepared breakfast for the Vega Santa Maria family. Freshly squeezed orange juice, eggs Benedict, toast with jam imported from France, and Colombian coffee from Select Beans. The kitchen was her silent kingdom, the only place in the house where she felt truly comfortable. While she beat the eggs and heated the butter in the copper pan, she could hear the first movements of the family on the upper floor. Mr. Ricardo's heavy footsteps heading to the bathroom, the shower running in the master bedroom, and occasionally Doña Carmen's screams reproaching something to one of her children. "Maria, where is my breakfast?" Doña Carmen's strident voice resonated from the dining room like a whip. "It's already 7:30. What have you been doing all morning?" Maria gritted her teeth and accelerated her movements, loading the silver tray with carefully arranged plates. She had learned that responding to provocations only made things worse. It was better to keep her head down, do her work in silence, and try to go unnoticed. "Excuse the delay, ma'am," she murmured while placing breakfast on the dining room table. A mahogany masterpiece that was worth more than everything Maria had earned in 5 years of work. Doña Carmen didn't even look up from her society magazine. "Next time you're late, I'll discount the entire day from your salary. And clean that tray well, it looks dull." Maria nodded silently, but inside she felt how anger accumulated drop by drop, like water in a container that would someday overflow. There were days when she wondered why she stayed there, why she didn't look for another job. But the answer was always the same. She needed the money to support her sick mother and send something to her younger siblings in the village. The humiliations came in constant waves, some so subtle that other people wouldn't have noticed them, others so obvious that they slapped her like public blows. When there were guests in the house, Doña Carmen had the habit of talking about Maria as if she were just another piece of furniture. "The little black girl is quite efficient at cleaning, although sometimes you have to explain things to her several times," she told her friends during their Wednesday tea meetings. "You know how these people are. They have goodwill, but they lack education." Maria served tea and French pastries, maintaining a neutral expression, but each word was like a pin stabbing her dignity. She had studied up to 3rd year of high school before having to abandon her studies to work, could do mathematical calculations mentally faster than most of Doña Carmen's guests, and read voraciously all the books she found in the house library when no one was around. One afternoon, while cleaning Mr. Ricardo's study, she found an article in a business magazine about something called cryptocurrencies. The idea fascinated her. Digital money that existed only in computers, that could be sent around the world without banks or governments controlling it. She spent several minutes reading about Bitcoin and Ethereum, imagining a world where people like her could access financial opportunities without depending on institutions that discriminated against them. She mentally stored that information, not knowing that years later it would become one of her first successful investments. But the hardest moments came when Sebastian was in the house. The eldest son of the Vega Santa Marias had returned from university converted into a shadow of himself. Sunken eyes, trembling hands, violent mood swings. Maria had watched him grow up since he was a child. She had been the one who healed his knees when he fell from his bicycle, who prepared his favorite snacks, who consoled him when he had nightmares. "Hey, black girl," he now shouted at her when he needed money. Go get me something valuable from my parents' room. Just something small that won't be noticed. I can't do that, young Sebastian, Maria responded firmly. That would be wrong. Wrong? Sebastian laughed with a laugh that had nothing joyful about it. Do you know what's wrong? That my family keeps me in this house like a prisoner. Go for my grandmother's jewelry. Just a chain. Something that won't be noticed. I'll compensate you when I have my own money. Maria always refused, and Sebastian always ended up leaving, slamming doors and cursing. She knew the boy was sick, that drugs had converted him into someone unrecognizable, but she also knew that if she helped him steal, she would be the one to pay the consequences. Little Isabella was her only refuge of peace in that house. The 8-year-old girl had an insatiable curiosity and a generous heart that contrasted dramatically with the rest of her family. She sat in the kitchen while Maria prepared food and asked her 1,000 questions about everything. Why the sky was blue, why plants needed water, why some people had darker skin than others. Maria, do you have children? She asked one day while Maria kneaded bread. No, my child. But I have little brothers in my village who are like my children. Do you miss them? Maria stopped for a moment, with her hands covered in flour. Every day. When I grow up, I'm going to have a very big house and you're going to live there with us and your brothers can come too, declared Isabella with the seriousness that only children have when they make promises they believe eternal. Maria smiled and caressed her curly hair. You are an angel, my child. But angels can't always protect those they love. One March night, when the rains beat furiously against the mansion's windows, Maria was awakened by Doña Carmen's hysterical screams. The jewelry! Someone stole my mother's jewelry! Her voice pierced through the walls like a knife. Maria got up immediately, putting on her robe and heading toward the master bedroom. She found the entire family gathered in the parents' bedroom. Doña Carmen was crying inconsolably. Mr. Ricardo was checking drawers, and closets. Sebastian remained in a corner with an absent expression. Valentina yawned, annoyed at being awakened, and Isabella clung to her favorite doll with eyes wide open from fear. What happened, ma'am? Asked Maria. Doña Carmen turned toward her with bloodshot eyes. Someone stole my mother's emerald necklace, and the diamond earrings, and the ruby bracelet. Maria felt her blood freeze in her veins. Those jewels were worth a fortune. They were family heirlooms that had passed from generation to generation. Are you sure you didn't store them somewhere else? She asked with a trembling voice. Of course I'm sure, screamed Doña Carmen. I always keep them in the same box in the same drawer. Someone entered my room and stole them from me. Mr. Ricardo slowly approached Maria. His gaze was cold, calculating, and in it Maria could see her fate sealed before he even opened his mouth. Maria, he said with a measured voice, you are the only person outside the family who has free access to this room. Mr. Ricardo's words fell on Maria like stones thrown from a great height. The air became dense, unbreathable, and she felt how the room's walls closed around her like the jaws of a deadly trap. Mr. Ricardo, I never, she began to say, but he interrupted her with a hand gesture. I'm not directly accusing you, but it's necessary that we check your belongings. It's a normal procedure in these cases. I haven't stolen anything. Maria's voice came out higher than she would have wanted, betraying the panic that was beginning to take hold of her. I've been working in this house for 5 years. I've never taken even a peso that didn't belong to me. Doña Carmen approached with her face disfigured by fury and desperation. 5 years during which you've been observing our routines, learning where we keep our most valuable things. 5 years gaining our trust to someday betray us. That's not true. Maria turned toward little Isabella, who observed the scene with wide-open eyes. Isabella, my child, you know I would never do something like that, right? Little Isabella began walking toward Maria, but her father stopped her by grabbing her arm. Isabella, go to your room, this is not children's business. But Daddy, I saw when Sebastian... I told you to leave, shouted Mr. Ricardo with unusual violence. Isabella began to cry, but before leaving the room she managed to look Maria in the eyes and silently articulated, I know who it was. Valentina, who had remained silent during the entire discussion, finally spoke. "Dad, maybe we should think about other possibilities. Sebastian has been very strange lately, and I've noticed that—" "Shut up," shouted Doña Carmen. "I won't allow you to accuse your own brother to defend a thief." "I'm not a thief," Maria screamed with all her strength, releasing years of accumulated frustration. "I'm a working woman who has sacrificed her entire life to serve this family. I've cleaned your filth, I've endured your contempt, I've worked 14 hours a day without ever complaining." Mr. Ricardo approached her with a threatening expression. "If you didn't steal the jewelry, then you won't have problems with us checking your room. Check everything you want," responded Maria with dignity. "You won't find anything because I haven't taken anything." The search was humiliating and thorough. They checked every drawer of her small dresser, every pocket of her clothes, every corner of her tiny room. They emptied her mattress, dismantled her radio, checked even her personal hygiene products. Maria remained standing by the door, watching how they destroyed the only private space she had in the world. "There's nothing here," finally admitted Mr. Ricardo. "Because I'm not a thief," repeated Maria with a broken voice. But Doña Carmen wasn't willing to accept the evidence. "Surely you already sold them, or you hid them somewhere outside the house." "Ma'am, please, don't call me ma'am," screamed Doña Carmen. "A thief doesn't deserve to address me with respect." At that moment, Isabella appeared at the room's door, disobeying her father's orders. Her face was stained with tears, and she held something in her small hands. "Mom? Dad? I found this under Sebastian's bed," she said with a trembling voice. In her hands gleamed Grandmother Esperanza's emerald necklace. The silence that followed was so profound that you could hear each person's heartbeat. Doña Carmen remained paralyzed, with her mouth open, looking at the jewelry in her youngest daughter's hands. Mr. Ricardo paled until he looked like a ghost. "Isabella, what are you doing in your brother's room?" he asked with a hoarse voice. "I went to look for my ball that I had lost," responded the girl with innocence. "And I found this under his bed along with other shiny things." Sebastian, who had remained silent during the entire confrontation, finally spoke. "It's not what it seems. I was just taking care of them. Mom always leaves them lying around, and I thought they would be safer in my room." "Liar!" screamed Isabella with a fury that surprised everyone. "I saw you taking them from Mom's room last night, and I also saw you last month selling Grandpa's gold watch." Doña Carmen collapsed into a chair, covering her face with her hands. My God, what have we done?" But Mr. Ricardo had other priorities. He approached Maria and put a hand on her shoulder. "Maria, this has been a terrible misunderstanding. We hope you can forgive us and that we continue as if nothing happened." Maria pulled away from his touch as if it burned. "As if nothing happened? After accusing me of being a thief? After humiliating me in front of your entire family? After checking my belongings as if I were a criminal?" "We'll compensate you," said Doña Carmen without lifting her gaze. "We'll give you a raise, paid vacations, whatever you want. The only thing I want is to leave this house and never return," responded Maria with a dignity that surprised even herself. "You can't leave," said Mr. Ricardo harshly. "You know too much about Sebastian's problems. If you talk, you could ruin our family's reputation." Maria looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and contempt. "Are you threatening me? I'm offering you a deal. You stay, continue working as always, and in exchange, you maintain discretion about what you've seen here." "No!" screamed Isabella, running toward Maria and hugging her around the waist. "She can't leave. She's the only good person in this house." Maria knelt to be at the girl's height and looked her in the eyes. "My beautiful child, you were the only one who had the courage to tell the truth when all the adults preferred lies. Never forget that. Never let anyone tell you that your voice doesn't matter." She stood up and headed toward the door. "I don't accept your deal, Mr. Ricardo. I'm leaving right now, and if you give me legal problems, I'll tell everyone the truth about your son and about how you treat your employees. If you leave now, we won't give you references," threatened Doña Carmen. "Your references are worth nothing to me," responded Maria. "I prefer to start from scratch with my dignity intact than to continue living in this lie." That same night, Maria packed her few belongings in a cardboard suitcase and left the mansion forever. She had no money, no job, no references, but she had something more valuable. She had the certainty that she had done the right thing. The following years were the hardest of her life. She worked cleaning offices during the early morning hours, sold food on the streets, accepted any honest job she could find. But every night, when she returned to her small rented room, she sat down to study. First, she finished her high school by correspondence, then studied accounting at a night institute. Later, she enrolled in business administration. She remembered that article about cryptocurrencies she had read years before, and with her first savings made small investments that with time and patience multiplied. Every peso earned was a victory against those who had bet on her failure. 10 years after that terrible night, she received an unexpected call. It was Isabella, now converted into an 18-year-old young woman, who had been looking for her for months until she found her. "Maria, I need to see you," she told her with an adult voice but with the same sweetness as when she was a child. "I have to ask for your forgiveness on behalf of my family, and I have a proposal that I think will interest you." When they met at a downtown cafe, Maria could barely recognize little Isabella. She had become a beautiful, elegant woman, but above all, with a determination in her eyes that reminded her of herself. "I've been saving money since I turned 15, Isabella explained. "I sold all the jewelry they gave me, worked during vacations, saved every peso I could. I want to form a company with you. A consulting company where we help other women like you build their own businesses." Maria looked at her with tears in her eyes. "Why would you do that for me?" "Because you taught me that truth is more important than comfort," responded Isabella. "And because you're the strongest woman I've known in my life. If anyone can change the world, it's you." 5 years later, their company was one of the most successful consulting firms in the country. Maria had returned to the mansion not as the humiliated employee, but as the powerful woman she had become. And although forgiveness wasn't in her heart, victory was in her hands. When she left the mansion that afternoon, after confronting those who had destroyed her, Maria felt she had finally closed that painful chapter of her life. In her car waited Isabella, now her partner and the sister she had never had. "How do you feel?" Isabella asked her. Maria smiled, looking one last time at the mansion that had been her hell and her motivation. "I feel free,"